என் பேரு Shruti Sridharan. I have been a student and a practitioner of theatre for the past 20 plus years. I act, I sing, I dance, I live and I breathe on and off the theatre stage. But I also have a very, very deep interest in learning and education. I have worked as an arts-based educator now for the past 15 years. I am a theatre teacher. I have been a drama-based corporate trainer. I'm an acting coach who I especially work with children quite a lot. And I've been deeply invested in the dream of carving out pathways that integrate and engrave the arts, all the arts, whether that is theatre, whether that's literature, visual arts, cinema, photography, dance, movement, traditional forms, contemporary forms. My endeavor is to try and find a way to merge all of this with mainstream education, especially in schools. I do this by the way of designing curriculum plans, curriculum modules, and as well as teacher training modules for schools and help them bring the arts into the school as often as possible. Apart from this, of course, I continue to work as a drama teacher. I direct plays with children. I teach them theatre and the basics of it as they are, age appropriate, in age appropriate modules. And so my talk today is titled Improvising Curriculum, Freedom over Fear. But before we get into what curriculum should look like, we must take a very hard look at what it looks like right now. This morning, we all heard Adu Shri Gopalakrishnan speak, and a part of his speech also touched upon this. He observed and he talked to us about how the lives of children right now are overtaken by the fight for marks, by the need to get rank in school. They want to be, everyone wants to be a first ranker or a second ranker. Everybody wants to get great marks. Parents, teachers, and every adult that a child interacts with, we all want to know from them what they want to be when they grow up. Even at the age of 5, we ask questions like, what will you be when you grow up? Will you be an engineer? Will you be a doctor? Right from the age of 5, we inculcate in them this need that they have to become something at some point in their life. We all tell them that they need to get good marks so that they can do something later in life. They need to be prepared for what is coming up. Competition. These are the kinds of words that we throw into the lives of children. And for the entire duration of their school life, they are told what they must do, what they must not do, what they must. We think that we are preparing them for the future. We think that we are looking out for them. But if we really take a moment and step back and look at the impact of this approach, it will become very inculcating a feeling of fear in children. If we are being really honest with ourselves, right now, all our lives as adults, anything like we were told it would be when we were in school? At least mine is not. Mine is not. My life today, the things that I do, the questions that I ponder about, the problems that I grapple with, whether it's professional, whether it's personal, none of it is anything like what I was told it would be, like what I imagined it would be when I was a child. And it was really, really nothing that any schooling could have prepared me for. We were just talking about it some time ago about how at liberal arts college level, young people are being taught banking and taxation and life skills. Of course, we know none of this is taught in school. Beyond the basic literacy and arithmetic that children bring out of the schooling level, everything else that they need to know to get a job is learned at the college level. So what is it that we are giving them? Apart from a fear of the future? Look at us, all of us here right now. We all might have gone to different schools. We all would have studied in different medium. English, Hindi, Malayalam, Kannada, Tamil, etc., etc. CBSE, ICSE, international, state board, multiple curriculums. Some of us might have been toppers. Some of us might have failed. Some of us might have been average, below average. Some of us might have even given up on the education system entirely at structure. The other thing that unites us right now is that all of us, during our schooling years, have felt fear of one kind or the other. Yeah? How many of us had a strict teacher that we were afraid of? Yes, absolutely. Fear of being bullied. Being bullied, yeah. Fear of, how many of you have had the fear of asking a teacher a question? Just even if you have a question, you're like, should I not, should I not, and before that, the class is over. Yeah? Fear of answering a question. I know the answer, but I don't. Yeah? Fear of answering a question because, God forbid if I get it wrong. Right? Because we also have the fear of being wrong. Because we are told, in school, we are told that there is always a right answer and there's always a wrong answer and you're not allowed to be wrong. And all of this, we're also feared of punishment. These days, you don't see that very often. You don't have teachers walking around with wooden rulers, but there's enough people in this room, I'm sure, who have experienced wooden ruler, with the taste of a wooden ruler on your open palm. Yeah? I know I have. Fear of punishment and the fear of exams. At one point, the education ministry scrapped exams for every year. Otherwise, during our time, we had to give exams grade 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way to the 10th. And then 10th was the only one that was important. They finally realized, 10th is the only one that's important, let's scrap it all later. But even today, children are afraid of their exams. We just met Kanaka ma'am's daughter who has a test tomorrow and she's been talking about it for the last 3 days. Oh yes, I have a test, I have a test, I have a test. So the fear of exam is something that's also ingrained thanks to our schooling system. And for me, I don't know how it was for you, I'm sure you would resonate with me. For me, I also had a massive fear of the kind of thudding in a tome I'd have to do back at home and I have to show my report card. Where did these marks go? What kind of silly mistakes did you make? I was more scared of my parents than I was of my teachers. Very honestly, because those were questions I couldn't avoid. I couldn't hide under a desk and avoid, I had to answer them. But most of all, we all grew up with the fear of the future and we all grew up with the fear of the unknown. And let's be honest, we're all adults in this room here. It's taken us almost an entire lifetime to try and to fail and to try again and come out of the sense of fear in the attempt to make something out of ourselves. We've spent a large part of our adult life grappling with this sense of fear that schooling has inculcated in us. One of the most respected educationists of contemporary times is Sir Ken Robinson. If you don't know him, you should Google him, you should watch his TED Talk. And in his TED Talk, he declares very openly and very confidently that schools kill creativity. That TED Talk had a huge impact on me. I watched it very early on during my teaching years. And it was actually based on a very landmark research conducted in the late 60s by Dr. George Land. It was funded by NASA, and NASA wanted to study creativity in human beings because they believed at the time when NASA was trying to send a ship to the moon, men to the moon, they wanted to understand, यहाँ पे तो हमको पता है कि problems कैसे solve होते हैं, but एक बार once you go off into space, the kind of problems that will come up, we can't predict them, so we need people who are creative enough to solve them. So we need to do a study on creativity. So they got Dr. George Land, and Dr. George Land spent 10 years, and he studied a group of 1,600 children of various ages across these 10 years. And at the end, he published the results, which are actually very worrying. It was actually a study on creative genius was the parameter that they were looking at. And they found that between the age of 3 to 5, when you test children, 98% of those 1,600 children between the age of 3 to 5 tested creative genius level. Okay? When they ran the same test on those same children, 5 years later, at the age of 10, The number had come from 98 to 30%. 5 years later. At the age of 15, it was 12%. And by adulthood, can anybody guess? What is the percentage of creative genius that was discovered through this study amongst adults? It was 98 at 3 and 5 years of age. At adulthood, it was 2%. Better than zero, thankfully. But just about. So obviously there is no doubt then that it corroborates what Sir Ken Robinson says, that schools have systematically found a way to kill creativity. And this is but obvious. Because the schooling system that we currently follow, which is देन, in Hindi हम कहते हैं देन है British Raj की, we've got it as an heirloom from the British Raj, which is very, very different from the Indian schooling systems before that. This morning, in fact, Vishwanath ji was talking about the discourses in the Buddhist schools and the other Indian traditions of schools, where discussion and debate and dialogue were the premise. But in the British schooling system, discipline and schedule became the premise of all kinds of quote-unquote learning. What we're studying today still is a way to serve the industrial revolution. Yeah. Kids are being sent to school to learn schedule, to learn routine, to know what to do when a bell rings, to put one book away and pull out another one. These were all skills that was required when we were going into the industrial revolution. Now, we are way beyond even the knowledge age. We are in an age where we had a wonderful artist here who was performing a piece which was created through AI. We are in a time here where a 5-year-old picks up, Aruji was talking about the incident with that 5-year-old child looking at a TV serial and commenting about a paternity test. We are living in that age right now and not an industrial one. So something needs to be done about it. So the question is, what is the solution? What can you and I do about it? And more importantly, is it even our job? I mean, this is not an education conference. I'm aware of that. This is a place where we are gathered here as artists, as rasikas, as people who want to appreciate art, people who want to create and make art. So is it really our job? Why is it relevant to us? Why? Because no matter how complex a problem, the only solution can be if we are willing and able to be creative. Across history, if you take any part of history, any problem or any question that came up could only be solved by the willingness and ability of a person to think outside the box, to be creative. In fact, the very idea of putting a man on the moon was a creative one at the start of it all. The very idea of can an artificial intelligence recreate a photograph was a creative question and not a need-based question. So creativity is actually at the very root of everything that we see together today in the world. And in our schools, we give one art period, one drama period, if at all, one music period in an entire week, one library period. We were earlier talking about how children don't read. 35 minutes in an entire week with a limited access library is all they get. So what can we do here as artists? Now I can talk about myself to begin with. It was only when I was actually a very good student, very honestly, and I was going to be an engineer, a software engineer. I did 3 years of my bachelor in computer applications and then suddenly realized this is not my world. I need to be somewhere else, and I found theatre. And that, honestly, was the very first time I did a master's degree in theatre. I was much, much older. I was not a child anymore. It was the first time in my life that I had experienced what freedom in an educational context would feel like. For the first time, someone was interested in what I know. Someone was interested in what I think. Someone was actively asking me, what is your perspective on this? How can you create a narrative around this? What is the visual reference you would like to bring in? And suddenly I felt both nervous because I didn't know I could. I wasn't sure I was allowed to. Nobody had ever asked me before. And free at the other time because I could try anything, I could experiment, I could fail. A lot of us over here are creators, are writers, are musicians, artists, dancers. We all know what this feeling feels like. When we are sitting down to create something where nothing else exists before, the world is your oyster, the sky is your limit. There is a sense of freedom in creation, even if you give yourself whatever parameters you want to. So there's something here. Is there a little bit of wisdom here that can be applied in the schooling space with the next generation of people who are, of course, going to turn into artists and musicians and whatnot, but they're also going to be doctors and lawyers and scientists who are going to run the world. But also in our context, there are going to be the audiences and the readers and the rasikas and the listeners of our work. So what is our responsibility today as artists living in a community where we are either parents or we are associated with children in our lives or have access to schools? What can we do to find ways of bringing this creative freedom into the school spaces? And by this, I don't mean adding more art classes. Because, let's be honest, what were our art periods like? Teacher would draw something on the board or put up a painting and we were asked to copy that. There was no room for improvisation. There was not even a room to ask a question, ma'am, why this? They would be the ones to say, you see where the white color is? That is light. Now paint the light. You see the curve, the shine on the apple? That is white paint. There was no room for us to think creatively. So it's not just about adding more art classes or adding more music classes where we are taught Saregamapa over and over and over again. The answer lies in seeking a more artistic lens towards no matter what we teach. Can we find a way to open for interpretation in a maths class? Why can't we? At some point, people didn't know something, na? They must have tried something. They must have tried to figure out an answer. Is room for improvisation in a science class? Is there a room to get something wrong in a math or a science class? Or easier still, can I bring in a painting of Kandinsky into a 5th grade maths class because I'm teaching them geometry, and I start by asking them about things about the colors in the painting and the feelings that they're feeling, and then slowly come into geometry? Is there a way of me playing a piece of music in a science class and then asking them to connect that with the water cycle from the top of my head? Is there a way we can bring in literature into a history class? Adurji spoke about Raja Ravi Verma paintings. Bring them into a history class. Talk about the Travancore kingdom using the paintings. Look at the costumes they're wearing, the jewelry they're wearing. Think about what life they must have had. Create a little play around it. The Travancore history is sitting now in our bodies. So this is the question I want to sort of open out to this audience here, because we are all coming here year after year, grappling with ideas around the arts, around dialogue. Freedom for dialogue. We don't have that in school. Here we have to create an entire festival with calling people from all over the world to talk freely. In a school system, that's where it's supposed to be safe, right? Safe to get something wrong. If I have to learn something, I need to first know what is wrong. Only then I'll know what is right. Freedom to ask a question and have a dialogue about something. When I was younger, debate clubs were very big. These days we don't see debate. There's no healthy space to have differing opinions. So can these ideas, slightly more tangential, but still very rooted in learning, still very necessary for our human growth, can we find a way to bring that into our curriculum and move away from this doctrine of fear, which, needless to say, we are sitting in 2025 India, thankfully in Kerala state, the doctrine of fear is something that is over our head constantly in this country. Is there a way where we can break that, rebel against that at the level that it matters? Not once we are all with grey hair and set opinions about the world, at a level where there's still room for growth, there's still room for development, there's still room for curiosity and innocence and finding solutions in the simplest way, where we don't complicate everything. So can we find, as people who work with the arts, in the arts, receive the arts, experience the arts, and enjoy the arts? Can we find pathways that can bring this joy, this freedom into the lives of our children as often as possible? And that's all I wanted to talk about. Thank you so much for listening. If you have any questions, I still have a few minutes, I think, Kanika. If anybody has questions, anything, again, like I said, freedom. So freedom to ask questions is inbuilt in this talk.
What you have said, bringing Ravima's page and painting and teach history and all, but it's very demanding and consuming for the teacher. It's not easy. You know, that's what, how to, counter, how can you...
Thank you so much for asking this question, Kanika, because this I understand. I have been working with the school systems for long enough to know that there are many challenges just beyond intention. There is a lot of intention in a lot of individuals, but there are, how do you go about it? Usme, first thing and foremost is the management investment in this, their buy-in, as we call in the corporate world, buy-in into an idea. But, and here I think we've also failed our teachers as a system. Our B.Ed programs, our teacher training programs are very weak. They are not in line with contemporary practices. They are still very much dated. So I think as schools, we need to find ways in which we can engage with the community of artists. Maybe run theatre workshops for teachers to be able to understand how do we use theatre vocabulary. Maybe bring in an artist, take teachers to art galleries, have discussions, and then, of course, take children, but then have teachers be able to use those vocabularies in the classroom as much as possible. And this is something that I believe very strongly. These are not, this is not about children should be better at something, it's about how do we as adults do that. And the first point is, of course, the parents, but also teachers. And that's a large part of my work is working with teachers and building these capabilities, and it takes time. But I have realized that the minute the school head buys into it, teachers are willing, the majority of teachers are willing to find newer ways of engaging with children because they understand the ground level problems. Loss of attention span in children, children not being interested. They already know, they've seen some YouTube videos, so they're not interested in the class right now. Teachers are grappling with this on a daily basis, so the more avenues we provide them, the more they get trained to use them. But you're right, the system doesn't support it as of right now. It has to be an additional effort.
The money part, teachers should are paid pittance, because if you, it's very sad actually. I have a school and I wish I could pay them more, and it's not possible because parents feel, actually they are ready to pay lakhs and crores for when for sending them for engineering and medical. But actually it's very important when they are studying, kindergarten and all. That's where the teachers' input is more needed, and that's where those teachers should be paid more.
In fact,
and
the group of hardest working individuals that I've ever come across, and I've worked across many sectors, if I rate the hardest working group, it would be kindergarten teachers, not even primary or middle school or senior. Hardest, there no engineer, no civil engineer, no construction, nobody, even physical labor can compare with the hard work that kindergarten teachers do. And it's not just during school hours, they're taking work back home, they have to come back and prepare for multiple days, individual children's needs. It's a mountain.
Parents demand.
Yes.
Every day you have to tell the parents what their kid has done in the school.
On that note, I'd like to say that parents have demands. To some extent it's justified, beyond a point it's not. They expect miracles. Why don't we also try and introduce workshops for parents where they understand?
Absolutely. So I'm glad you brought that up, because I've seen that in some schools where these methodologies work, the schools where I've been a part of. There's one particular one in Chennai called Ramana Vidyalaya. They found the money, brought us in to do a teacher training over 3 years with a cohort of teachers, where they included 3 periods of multiple arts in the timetable in a week. And of course, I became in and with the curriculum planning and the teacher training, etc. But alongside this, they did advocacy meetings with parents as well as the rest of the school body. We were working with the kindergarten and the primary year teachers, but they did advocacy meetings and some specialized workshops for the parent body to understand what is this and why is it important for your child. So I think there needs to be a little bit of syncretic kind of an exchange between the school, the teachers, the parents, because children at the end of the day, if you give them a box of colors, they're happy. You don't really need to bring in, a Picasso and show it to them. So children over here are actually the ones who we are doing all of it for. But my friend says this कि कुछ करने के लिए कुछ और करना पड़ता है हमेशा. So if you really, what you want to do is work with children and give them a particular experience, you have to do these multiple peripherals. There was a time when parents didn't care what was happening in schools. So in a way we are slightly better off because parents have a say, have a question, they have a lens into what's happening. But it goes the other extreme. I have worked in schools where
they don't want responsibility. They want everything.
they want results. They want results. They want their child to be the lead actor in a play.
The attitude. We are paying, so you
We are paying so much, you can't give my child more than 4 lines in a play. We work with 200 children. How can you give him more than 2 lines in a play?
And they train their kids to become aggressively competitive.
Absolutely. And very honestly, the child might not be that. He might be very okay being the tree. But the mother is so aggressively that no, I want my child to have the main part, that the child is like, Mummy ne kaha, to mujhe main nahi kar
It's also
sakta.
a societal problem now. Everybody in the world wants to be different from and better than. We don't have to
Absolutely.
be different from and we don't have to be
Better than.
We
This
have
is
to
what
be better.
Adurji was saying this morning. Everybody cannot be a first ranker, but everybody is trying to be a first ranker. God knows for what. I don't know a single first ranker in my community of friends or people who have gone on and done something fantastic. The biggest businesses right now in the world are set up by college and school dropouts. Right? So first rank really did not give us much of an edge, yeah?
and these
Why
schools
can't we
propagate.
just be
We
the
have done
best
this.
at what we can do?
Why can't
The
we?
best that I am, I want to be, not because I'm competing with anybody.
Absolutely. Why can't I be the best? Ishmeet, you've been waiting to say something.
So I understand all these concerns and they are all like wonderful concerns till class 8.
Yes.
The moment the student enters class 8, there is something totally different that happens to both students and parents. And there is
And
a
teachers
peer
and schools.
and everybody, right? So there is a peer pressure, there is a huge coaching center pressure. Lot of schools are opening coaching centers within schools. There are concepts of dummy schools. And all that you have done before this age group, before 13 years, I don't know where does that get lost.
So here is I have one thing, because my daughter studied in a school where till grade 2 she didn't know how to read and write, nothing. And then the lockdown came. 2 years it was online class. When all other usual schools were taking 45 minutes period online class, imagine. I don't know why they could not think. It's actually one kid you are teaching at a time in an online class. Means it's not 40 kids. There are 40 kids, you are reaching each one at a time, no, actually. But this guy used to stand in front of the blackboard and, something like, he used to think that much of lack of, those things. And such school, in that, her school, which had only half an hour class, and in that they had 2 breaks, and that's all. Like in a day there were 2 online classes or something like that. And when she came to grade 5, that's when the lockdown, was over. And then she started reading and writing very slow, But now she is. I never push her or anything. She herself says, "Amma, I would like to, today wake me up at 5 o'clock." And all those kind of things. So this is what you have said. Now she's in 8th grade, okay?
No, but
So
this is like, there's a lot of awareness and exposure to this child. Right?
now the
But-
school,
Yeah,
not just
the school also.
Yeah.
But a lot of parents are not ready to,
Yeah, that's right.
encourage
They don't have
their
trust.
students to become painters
Yeah.
or to become writers.
So here is my point. My point is not that our children need to go and become artists or writers or painters or actors. That's not the point. Even if they want to, and I believe there's always going to be a percentage, and I don't think the percentage is ever going to change. It was always 10 to 15%. I think it'll always be in that same range. Thoda 19-20 ke alawa. The need for everyone to become an artist has to be innate and inbuilt. But the ability to look at something creatively, irrespective of whether it's a math problem or it's a painting, is ingrained in all of us. And if we are able to find a link or a hook, जैसे हम हिंदी हम scripts में when you're writing a play or when you're writing a film or when you're writing a story, we try to find a hook. गानों में hook line, choreography में hook line. So in the context of education, we need to find a hook into that space where we are able to tap into their creativity and build from there, as opposed to bring in something completely alien like the Pythagoras theorem and ask them to mug it up. How many of us have used the Pythagoras theorem in our lives? We don't remember it.
We had to cram it up together.
We have to cram it. Sine theta, cos theta, tan theta. What have we done with it? Where did it go? It's just evaporated after the school life. I have not seen it appear anywhere except in a comedy sketch somewhere. Why did I have to spend all those hours mugging that? Why couldn't I have used those hours to read a book? I could have read Catcher in the Rye maybe instead of doing sine theta, cos theta. That would have taught me more about the world than the trigonometry. I could have sat and learnt the guitar in all the hours that it took me to memorize those trigonometry. I don't know, maybe there are I really haven't. I think only mathematicians use it. I don't know anybody in my real world life that uses trigonometry on a day-to-day basis for their work. Because we were told this is needed for work. We were sold a lie, basically. We were all sold a lie in school कि ये सब आपको life में काम आएगा इसीलिए आपको पढ़ना है. इधर वंदे निंगे memorize पढ़ना only then you will be able to get a job.
Sorry, we were not sold a lie, we were threatened.
We were threatened. We were absolutely. We were not. We never had any standing to buy anything. Yes. Mike. I think there should be a mic there.
Yeah, so I really give it.
I understand all your concerns, but I think the concept of schools, as we are seeing it now, have come up at a time when it was a very historical necessity.
Absolutely.
Because until then, our children were in the factories and they were working in the industries. So in the late 19th century and the early 20th century, we have had to begin the idea of state, democracy, and morning our MLA said about bringing a democratic values and constitution. So similarly, the idea of a modern school has begun during that time.
Sure.
So during that time also there were a few privileged section of people who had children who never wanted to go to a factory to work or to live. So basically the idea of modern schooling is a kind of a post-revolution thing. And it happened in the post-industrial revolution. Meaning to say that it was a need or a necessity. So,
just to clarify, I think the structure of schooling existed pre-industrial. The content was revised post-industrial revolution.
Of course, the structure was there, but the thing was, it was a very exclusionary form. Like majority of the children had no access to the idea of schooling system itself. For instance, if you look at the history of schooling in India, we had many things like Thinnai schools we had in Tamil Nadu, and we had Gurukula systems.
Yes.
But only those who are privileged with certain caste had access to go inside these systems. So meaning to say that in a modern sense, the school where everybody can go despite of their caste, class, privileges is what I've been talking about. So when we talk about that having freedom to work inside a school, to be artistic, to have an individual choice, so all these came only in the post 2000, or we have begun to think radically. Like we had people like Jiddu Krishnamurti or Aurobindo or Gandhiji or Paulo Freire. We had enough educationists in the world who thought differently. But I think bringing these ideas to the public school education sector is something that we have to look into.
Absolutely.
Because private schools work in the sector, like it's a sector, and mostly individual efforts come into play into that. And there is a limit, like we have a huge population. If you look at the country like India, China, America or anything, our population is huge. And if we want to really make some radical changes in the school system, I think we need to think about how public sector has to be improved and how we can give into that system. Because when you're talking about the parents in demand, the parents which you were talking about is a very smaller class. They come from a certain class and their demand is also different. So at the same time, there's another section of people who are still in the dropout. In India still have dropout children. So when we talk about education and reimagining education, we need to have a more thinking from a socio-economic side.
Absolutely. What is your with is the question of what can I do as an individual? I am a musician, I am a writer, I write poetry or I read poetry, I have a collection of books, I have a collection of paintings. I don't paint, but I just look at paintings online because I love looking at them. Whoever I am, what can I do? I'm not saying go into a school and become a teacher. No, that's not what I'm not saying that whatsoever. But what can we do maybe with children in our community? Can we show them an interesting children's film that we found on YouTube, which they otherwise don't have access to, and just have a discussion with them around it? If we do have access, if we have a child in a school, can we offer our time to the school to say, hey, I have a bunch of books, can we do a drop everything and read, 15-minute drop everything and read across the school next Friday? I will come and organize it. Can we do a book club, monthly book club in a school with students of 6th and 7th before they go into 8th, 9th and 10th and get caught up in the competition? In those formative years when they're still not yet caught up in the rat race of board exams, what is it that we can do with our limited experience, exposure and access to bring a moment of joy and a moment of freedom into the lives of children in our communities? Of course, this is a question for schools, but with the people that we have, what can we do? Jhanji Binduji.
थैंक यू। आपने कहा कि हम इंडिविजुअली जाकर स्कूल में जाकर कुछ दे सकते हैं या कर सकते हैं। गुजराती के एक कवि हैं कृष्ण दवे, वो प्यून थे बैंक में और मिस्त्री थे, फर्नीचर बनाते थे, लेकिन हर वीक में खुद का खर्चा करके अलग अलग गांव में जाके स्कूल में जाकर कविता गाते थे, पढ़ाते थे, समझाते थे बच्चों को, और बच्चों के प्रश्नों को लेकर, बच्चों के स्कूल बैग को लेकर, उनके सिलेबस को लेकर वो कविताएं लिखते रहे। और इतने 10 साल से वो आदमी काम कर रहा है। अब तो वो बिजनेसमैन हो गया है, लेकिन अभी भी वो जा रहा है। अब कार लेके जाता है और 2 दोस्तों को और ले जाता है कि चलो तुम भी बच्चों के आगे कविता पढ़ो। तो हम क्या कर सकते हैं, ये कृष्ण दवे ने बताया मुझे। थैंक यू।
And much like Adurji said, there is stories, there's poems in their textbooks. What can we do beyond their textbooks? Ishmeet was telling me just now while we were having lunch about this community movement in Ahmedabad, am I right? Where it all started with Mahashweta Devi asking the community, what do you need from us? And they said, we want a library. A person from the community offered their first floor room. All the authors, including Mahashweta Devi, invested in that library, and for a while, children of the community came and read. In the process, they discovered Badal Sarkar. They read those plays and they decided they wanted to do a play. And that entire community over the years has created a whole theatre movement of its own. And it all started with somebody asking, what do you need? The Budhan Theatre. The Budhan Theatre. And it all started with somebody going into that community and asking, what do you need? And they asked for a library. They didn't ask for iPads, which is also something to be noted. They asked for a library. Yes, I can. So these are the questions. Yes, yes.
I will try to add a different perspective here. Thing is, I had my schooling till 12 from a very normal school. So after school, I went to architecture college, and it is very much creative. So the very first day when I went to my college, on the reception, there is a naked Victorian man, which we need to study. Initially, we realized being molded with the system, we find it very shy tough to look at it even. So after some days, we get used to that. Then our college does not have a uniform, standardized uniform. We can wear whatever we need. After a week, our entire batch came to principal and said, we prefer having a uniform. So that, because that's the way how we were told in. Then principal came up and told us, here you are going to be an architect. I mean, you're going to be you have to do something out of the box. I can't ask you to be in a box and think something else. I mean, my point is, the students who graduate from schools after the schooling or something, it will be equally, very difficult for them also to unlearn things. It's a very, very tough unlearning.
Absolutely. In fact, you've summarized literally everything that I spoke right now. The world outside, we need to know something else and do something else entirely. And we come with a certain deep innate knowledge. We unlearn that in school. We come out thinking this is what we need for life, and we have to unlearn and relearn a whole new set of rules in order to be able to even start our journey as adults. So this is where we are. Like, and also as Atra said, specifically in the public school sector, this is where we are even now, no matter what the vocabulary has changed in the private school spaces. And it is on us, the adults, the policymakers, the artists, the people who can ask questions, people who find within ourselves the freedom, the courage to ask questions and demand change, to ask for these changes and make them happen within our communities for the future of our children. We need to find a way to improvise our curriculum and move towards freedom and away from fear. Thank you very much. Thank you for this opportunity, Kanaka.
Such a wonderful session actually. We did not want to end it actually. We have to go ahead.